What if the people we admire most are actually the ones who are most dangerous? Not because they're evil, not because they lie, but because we need them to lead, even when they're leading us straight into collapse. We say we want the truth, but when the truth is hard, when it hurts, we choose charisma over character. We choose certainty over honesty. We follow the loudest voice in the room, even when it's screaming nonsense. Nietzsche saw this pattern early. He called it the slave morality, a system where we glorify comfort, obedience, and weakness, and fear the ones who dare to think for themselves. It's why corrupt leaders rise. It's why smart people stay silent. It's why we cheer for destruction, as long as it makes us feel safe. But what if the people we've been calling strong, are they just skilled at hiding their weakness? And what if the real strength is the kind Nietzsche admired? Looks like rebellion, not applause. Because maybe the greatest threat isn't the tyrant. Maybe it's the crowd that cheers for him. In the spring of 1933, Germany was changing fast. The Nazi Party had just seized power, and the people weren't resisting, they were celebrating. It wasn't just soldiers and thugs. It was teachers, lawyers, pastors, and poets, educated people, literate people, people who had studied Goethe and Kant. They stood in crowds waving flags, cheering for the end of democracy. Among them stood one man who refused to clap. His name was Friedrich Nietzsche. No, not literally. He had died decades earlier. But his words, his warnings were echoing like prophecy. He had seen it coming. Nietzsche once said, "In individuals, insanity is rare, but in groups, parties, nations, and epochs, it is the rule." What he feared wasn't just the rise of power-hungry leaders. He feared the psychology of the masses, the way people abandon their minds the moment they find a leader who feels right. A man named Friedrich Bonhoeffer, a young theologian, was watching it happen in real time. He saw his own church bend the knee. He saw intellectuals stay silent. He watched as the desire to belong became more powerful than the duty to think. And it wasn't just Germany. You've seen it too. In politics, in celebrity culture, in business. We keep worshiping people who speak with confidence, even when they make no sense. We keep mistaking attention for authority. We follow strength, even fake strength, just because we fear the uncertainty of truth. That's what this video is about. Not just history, not just Nietzsche, but the psychological trap we all fall into, the way smart people surrender their minds, and how bad leaders thrive because of it. And by the end, you'll see why Nietzsche believed that our admiration is the most dangerous force in the world. To understand why Nietzsche feared admiration, you have to understand what he called slave morality. Nietzsche believed there were two types of morality. The first he called master morality, built by people who valued strength, independence, clarity, and creative force. To them, good meant power, responsibility, and excellence. Bad was anything weak, submissive, or dishonest. But over time, he said, the weak learned a trick. They couldn't defeat the strong, so they changed the rules. They redefined good as humility, obedience, pity, and conformity. They called ambition selfish. They called the questioning rude. They called strength evil. And just like that, the masses took control. Not through force, but through moral guilt. This is slave morality. It's not about ethics, it's about control. It rewards weakness and punishes strength. Not because weakness is right, but it makes the weak feel safe. Nietzsche saw it everywhere. In churches that glorified suffering, in schools that taught obedience over thought, in governments that told you who to fear, what to say, and what to think. And he wasn't just theorizing. He was watching the collapse of real society. In the late 1800s, Europe was entering a moral crisis. Traditional values were crumbling. Religion was losing its grip. And the crowd, now untethered from meaning, began to cling to ideology. Nietzsche predicted it. The time will come when man will no longer give birth to a star, but to chaos. He warned that without individuals strong enough to think for themselves, the masses would follow any voice that gave them comfort, even if it led to war, destruction, or madness. This wasn't just about leaders, it was about followers. Nietzsche believed that the worship of authority, not the authority itself, was the virus that led civilizations to collapse. And what made it worse? Admiration is addictive. We don't question the people we admire. We defend them, excuse them, become them. He saw how easily a society could replace truth with performance, replace depth with spectacle, replace integrity with image. Sound familiar? It's not just 19th century Germany. It's now. It's TikTok fame. It's political influencers with no values, only vibes. It's the CEO with a podcast and no product. It's the leader who says everything we want to hear. So we don't ask if any of it is real. Nietzsche's fear wasn't just that we follow bad people. It's that we need to follow someone so badly that we stop thinking entirely. And when that happens, it's not the tyrant who's the problem. It's the crowd who creates him. You'd think smart people wouldn't fall for bad leaders. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Intelligence does not protect you from manipulation. In fact, sometimes it makes it worse, because the smarter you are, the better you are at rationalizing. You don't see yourself as being fooled. You see yourself as choosing wisely. You don't say, "I admire them." You say, "I've looked at the facts," but what you've really done is filter the facts. It's called motivated reasoning, a bias where we selectively accept evidence that supports what we want to believe and reject anything that doesn't. Let's say a public figure does something questionable. If we admire them, we explain it away. They were under pressure. It's not as bad as it looks. They're still better than the alternative. But if someone we don't admire does the exact same thing, we call it proof of their corruption. This isn't just hypocrisy, it's psychological survival. Because once we admire someone, we attach part of our identity to them. If they fall, we feel like we fall. If they're wrong, maybe we were wrong. And that's terrifying. So, our brain protects us by distorting reality. Psychologist Leon Festinger called this cognitive dissonance, the pain of holding two conflicting beliefs at once. So the brain chooses the one that feels better, even if it's wrong. This is why cult leaders get defended. It's why politicians can lie repeatedly and still keep their followers. It's not about facts, it's about certainty. And in a world full of anxiety, chaos, and doubt, certainty feels like safety. But Nietzsche warned convictions are more dangerous enemies of truth than lies. Because once we decide someone is admirable, we stop looking, we stop questioning, we stop thinking. Worse, we start defending them as if our life depends on it, because in a way it does, not our actual life, but the story we tell ourselves to feel stable. This makes admiration extremely profitable. Advertisers use it, politicians master it, influencers weaponize it. Because if they can make you admire them, you'll buy what they sell, believe what they say, vote how they want. And if anyone criticizes them, you won't ask questions. You'll go to war. This is how entire societies collapse without firing a shot. Not through force, but through idol worship. Nietzsche saw it in Germany. He predicted it in modern democracy. And psychology has confirmed every part of it. We want someone to follow. We need a hero so badly that we'll build one out of anything, no matter how hollow. And the smarter we are, the better we get at convincing ourselves it's wisdom, when it's really fear in disguise. It always starts small. A leader gains popularity. They speak well. They say things no one else dares to say. They look confident, certain, and powerful. And people admire them, not because of what they say, but how they say it. They look strong, so people feel safe. But then things shift. They stop listening. They mock critics. They rewrite history. They twist truth into performance. And people still follow, because they've already committed. They're in too deep. This happened before. In the 1930s, Germany wasn't full of monsters. It was full of people looking for stability after economic collapse. They weren't looking for evil. They were looking for order. So when Hitler rose, he didn't force worship. He earned it through fear, through emotion, through identity. The result. The most educated modern country in Europe became the site of history's darkest crimes. People didn't resist. They defended it because they had made a god out of a man. And it's not just the past. Today, we see it everywhere. Leaders lie on camera. No one cares. Influencers push conspiracy theories. Millions share them. Celebrities get caught harming others. But fans call it fake news. It's not stupidity. It's idol worship. People don't want facts. They want faith. Faith in someone who makes them feel seen, feel strong, feel certain. And that's the trap. The more uncertain the world becomes, the more likely we are to choose feeling safe over being right. So we excuse corruption. We ignore red flags. We attack anyone who disagrees, not because we're evil, but because we're scared. And we've outsourced our thinking to someone who promised they'd do it for us. But Nietzsche warned us that when we blindly follow authority, we become spiritual slaves. And Bonhoeffer added that once stupidity takes over, it is immune to reason. This is where we are now. A world where intelligence is no shield, where popularity replaces wisdom, where confidence is confused with character. And the price we lose, not just our leaders, we lose our freedom, not to tyranny, but to ourselves. So, how do we break free? How do we resist the pull to worship the wrong people for the wrong reasons? In the wrong moments, Nietzsche said, the individual has always had to struggle to keep from being overwhelmed by the tribe. That's step one. 1. Become psychologically separate from the crowd. Don't just disagree, detach. Stop consuming the same noise as everyone else. Unfollow the same gurus. Mute the same outrage. Take time alone, away from trends, away from headlines. Because if you want to think clearly, you can't do it inside a storm. 2. Train your mind to love discomfort. The truth isn't cozy, it's confrontational. We don't grow by finding comfort. We grow by confronting contradiction. Here's a brutal rule. If someone makes you feel certain too quickly, that's not a leader, that's a seducer. Real leaders make you pause, make you reflect, make you think twice, not just cheer louder. So ask yourself, when was the last time you changed your mind? When was the last time someone challenged you and you didn't get defensive? If you can't remember, you're not thinking, you're following. 3. Replace admiration with analysis. Don't just like someone. Study them. Ask, what do they consistently avoid talking about? Who benefits from their rise? Do they ever admit fault? Or is everything always someone else's problem? If someone never admits they're wrong, that's not a strength. It's narcissism. If someone's followers attack critics like a cult, that's not loyalty. It's a delusion. 4. Learn from those who suffered under idol worship. Bonhoeffer didn't theorize from comfort. He wrote in prison. Nietzsche didn't warn from a pedestal. He warned from loneliness. They both paid price for independent thought. So should we. Not a literal prison, but the prison of being misunderstood, of losing comfort, of walking alone. That's the cost of mental freedom. But it's worth it. Because once you stop worshiping the wrong people, you start becoming the right one. You stop needing gods. You start building values. You stop cheering. You start thinking. And in that space, between blind loyalty and true wisdom, you find something sacred, not power, not fame, not comfort, but sovereignty. Bonhoeffer once said, it is the nature of all intellectual activity to be critical of its own time, not to destroy it, but to see it clearly, to rise above it. And maybe that's what we need now. Not more heroes, but more clarity. Not louder voices, but quieter minds. Because once you reclaim your own thinking, you no longer need someone else to think for you. If you've made it this far, you're not like most people. You're not afraid to think, even when it hurts. So now the question becomes, who are you still worshiping? Who gets your trust, your clicks, your loyalty? Without ever earning it, it's not always a politician or a celebrity. Sometimes it's a self-help guru, a spiritual leader, a charismatic friend. Ask yourself, would you still admire them if they had nothing? No fame, no followers, no perfect words. Would their ideas still matter if they didn't come from someone you liked? Because real wisdom doesn't need branding, it needs courage. Bonhoeffer asked, who stands firm, who keeps thinking, when the world begs you not to? The answer could be you, but only if you choose it. So here's my challenge. Leave a comment with one belief you've started to question, and what triggered it. Not to argue, but to invite others into your process, because the world doesn't need louder followers. It needs braver thinkers.